JL Power says, I have twin 10-year-old boys, both of whom are highly musically and artistically creative. While thing one seems to be having an easy time with the academics of 5th grade, thing two has been diagnosed with ADD and dyslexia and is struggling. What advice would you give to a parent who sees their child's passion and excitement for learning slowly being drained away by struggling to fit the strict mold of our current education system? I really appreciate you asking this question. I have thoughts about this matter. I don't know that I have an answer to your question because it's a big question, but I have some thoughts that I'd love to share with you. And I'm going to be circumspect about some of these details because my kid's story is theirs to tell. And I really respect their privacy. But, here's what I will say. Your question gets to the heart of the matter. Their child's passion and excitement for learning slowly being drained away by struggling to fit the strict mold of our current education system. So I have twin boys. They're now 25 and they're doing great. And similarly to what you're describing, one of them had a very easy time academically, and the other, who had ADHD, PI, predominantly inattentive version of ADHD, had a much more difficult time. And it started right around this age, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. We had tutors. We had some amazing tutors, 2 or 3 phenomenal human beings who came and worked with my son after school, and so did my wife. We also tried therapy. We also tried ADHD medications. In the final analysis, he's fine. He's a lovely adult human being, and he's like, he knows how to work hard, and he's kind. And how much else should I worry about? What else should I worry about? I do think that I spent too much time trying to help him fit into the mold of our current education system, because it's easier that way. And the education system is an inertial mass that wants everyone to roll along with it. And I had an easy time with it when I was in school. I didn't get great grades, but that was on purpose. Like I did exactly as much work as I needed to do to kind of get through school. The academics weren't that difficult. I was a mediocre performer because that was simple. But he had a much more difficult time dealing with the assignments and and it's funny, at one point my wife and I were saying, if we lived in some tiny town in France, if we were in some small location somewhere, it wouldn't make any difference because maybe there's like 12 kids in school and, his education can be sculpted to him. The problem is that when you work really hard to fit your kid into the mold of the school, it's stressful for everyone. And your kid feels that stress. They feel it, first of all, in themselves, I think, from the schoolwork and the difficulties of fitting the mold. But secondarily, they feel your stress. And I think that what I might have done is my kid saw my and our family stress at dealing with him in school and internalized some of that as like this problem was his problem. He was the problem. And that's the thing about the neurospicy is that so often in attempting to get them to fit a mold, they take on the disappointment of not fitting that mold as a personal failure, and it's not. A couple of weeks ago on the live stream, I was talking about neurodivergence and I said something blah, 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 normal people. I want to pause here and say I'm sorry for saying that, for making that dumb dichotomy of like, the more I read and the more I know about neurodivergence in every scale, the less I think there is a normal. And use of that word is it's not a useful word in this space. So I apologize for using it. But I would say one piece of advice is, if you are considering ADD, ADHD medications, my advice would be bring them in and have a high granularity of discussion with your kid about how it's going. Because we didn't do that, and my son had a very difficult time on the medication for various reasons that affected other parts of his system, and was not pleasant. And that made it more difficult. So again, I said I wouldn't have a specific and definitive answer to this, only that I think you are asking the exact right question. And I think if I could go back to tell my 20-year-older self how to best support my kid through grade school, middle school, and high school, it would be to allow more space, whatever that means, for him to find his own journey through it. I kept trying to find opportunities for him. And also I was doing this with split custody with his mom, which adds a whole nother layer of complexity to the decision-making and to the execution. But like I said, I felt like I spent too much time as a parent trying to get him to fit into that mold, because it seemed like the path of least resistance when it was a path of pretty high resistance. Yeah, we tried tutors, we did after school stuff, we did private school, we did boarding school. None of that really took. And again, he's now doing fine. He's in a career he loves, doing work that is valuable at a very high level, and he knows how to do it, and he's kind. So in the final analysis, how much do I really have to worry? Not a ton, and I'm really grateful for that. And I'm really grateful, JL Power, for your question. And this is, I think, the most important thing about raising kids is asking the questions as much as you can. The answers are few and far between, and everybody is so unique. There is no answer for how to deal with your kids specifically, except in your heart and in your family. Asking these questions. And like I said, when you're bringing in stuff like therapy and medications, having a high granularity of touch about how it's going with your kid, I feel like is a piece of advice I would have liked to give myself back then. Oh, Jordon Freeman says, do Thing 1 or Thing 2 ever try to pass themselves off as the other twin? How long did it take you to catch on? My twins are not identical. Most twins are not identical. Your basic fraternal twins are actually quite common. 2% of births, 1 in 50 births is fraternal twins. That makes them as common as redheads, which I always say because I used to be a redhead, even though I am not anymore. But yeah, redheads are as common as twins. Identical twins, way, way, way more rare. And no, my twins never. You know, the thing about twins is that they count everything. Even more than siblings, way more than siblings, because they are right there at the same age, getting the same data, making their own impressions from it, and they're just constantly counting. And my father was a twin. My father had a twin brother, and in their high school yearbook, my father and his twin brother's pictures were mixed up, and they don't look like each other. They're both handsome lads. They don't look like each other. And apparently the mixing up of their pictures was very traumatic for both of them, like a very upsetting moment for both of them. Within Twindom, if you have twins, people will come up to you often and ask you if they have made up their own language. There is a famous occurrence of this supposedly happening. A couple of young girls in, I think, Southern California who, and there's a documentary about it called Poto and Cabango. It's a beautiful, weird documentary about these two little girls who did not invent their own language. They grew up in a severely language-poor atmosphere of I believe, if I'm correct, a German father who never spoke to them, a German mother who spoke very poor English, and a housekeeper that spoke Spanish to them, a nanny that spoke Spanish to them, and basically they had so little human contact, this is the most depressing part, that they sort of came up with their own way of making up, of using words with each other based on what they were getting from these three languages they were hearing poorly. And some grad students basically figured out through a matrix of their conversation that they were basically just the result of a language poor environment, not inventing their own language. Wow, I went really off the rails on the twin thing. It's just when you have twins, you end up gathering all the twin facts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a tested member. I know, everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the tested membership has become such an important part of the tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to. And you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.